Hey, welcome to the Latest.com show. I'm Igor Darras. Joining us all the way from Canada, he's a staff writer at Latest.com and a contributor to She-Hulk from Toronto, Eric Carrier. And he's a military vet and Latest.com senior political analyst from Pittsburgh, Josh Patton. And he's a 24-year veteran in the U.S. State Department, the author We Meant Well from New York, Peter Van Buren. Well, last night we had the final Democratic debate before the New Hampshire primaries, a debate that wasn't even supposed to happen. Bernie and Hillary really went at it, got into a number of heated battles. They saw battle to see who was more progressiver. Peter, why do you think there's been so much importance placed on this progressive label for Hillary lately?
Mainly because I think the media thinks they can stir up controversy over it. It's a word, and it means different things to different people. Bernie has labeled himself that way, and he's chosen to label other people whatever. It's irrelevant. What matters is what he believes, what Hillary believes, whether you want to call it progressive or liberal or just call it, Apple. It's irrelevant. I was dismayed that Chuck Todd and Rachel Maddow spent so much time at the debate poking at the word and trying to stir up controversy. Kudos to Bernie for not taking the bait. And Hillary, unfortunately, decided to take the bait and to try to use the definition of a word against Bernie. That said, the Clintons are good about using definitions of a word. Wasn't Bill Clinton's defense, what does is mean, in his Monica Lewinsky saga? So it might be a family trait among them. I don't know.
I think Bernie's presence alone has kind of pushed Hillary to the left to where she is now a progressive, mainstream progressive, at least today. But, come October when Hillary's running against Rubio or whoever, are we going to see moderate Hillary? And isn't that the problem, Josh? Isn't that what worries Democrats the most?
I think. I don't know how important of an issue it actually is to people, but I do have to sort of disagree with Peter in that it's a media thing because, I've seen these sort of discussions playing out on social media and amongst my pro-Bernie and pro-Hillary friends, and it really is important to them that, they want a kind of, the way they want people to talk about liberalism, the way that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and everyone else gets like a tear in their eye and the national anthem playing in their head when they call themselves a conservative. So, but what's so funny about it is that it is ridiculous when they were getting into it. It was fun to watch, but I too was annoyed that they just kept going back and forth about whether or not they're progressive, who's establishment and who isn't, because, I thought Hillary did make a good point in saying that, it's kind of tough to call a person who would be the first woman president to be typical of the establishment, even though that's not exactly the context Bernie was talking in. It's still a fair point. And so
I disagree.
I disagree.
Okay, but I still
for that one.
Okay, which is amazing because, again, Democrats usually seem to care quite a bit about sexism and identity politics until all of a sudden there's a question. Well, I don't know if we shouldn't or not. Identity does tend to matter. All politics has been identity politics for, I think since, Kennedy? Well, of course it shouldn't, but, we're not talking about we're not going to a war with the army we want. We're going to the polls with the army we have.
Josh, we were talking about how Obama was lucky to benefit from the identity politics, but less likely that Clinton would be able to, benefit from something like that this time.
And that's the thing, and that's the other thing too. It's just that people say, "Oh, she's playing the gender card," and you can't play a card unless it's in your hand. Is sort of my point, and so I think that is. In terms of talking progressivism, I think that is an important distinction. Because here's the thing. The female version of Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, to be reductive and shitty about it, it has only been in politics, since 2010, was it, that she got elected, or 2012?
Later, 2012.
Either way, not very long. Hillary's been in the shit since 1990. So yeah, she kind of had to be a political chameleon. It's funny. She's only survived as long as she has because
I'm pretty sure she was a
of
Goldwater
all the
girl,
things
too,
she's.
in the 60s.
She absolutely was a
Pretty sure.
Goldwater girl.
Yeah.
But like a campaign volunteer in college. But either way, my point is that. Go ahead, Peter. Yeah, I've been monopolizing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to go back to this idea of establishment because,
Sure.
you have to look at the total group of issues and monikers that call someone an establishment person. First of all, 50% of everybody is a woman. It's pretty darn hard to keep playing to that, especially in 2016, as something so unique. Women have run for president. Women have been vice presidential candidates. For a large portion of the electorate, including a lot of people Hillary thought were going to support her, they seem to be way over the fact that she was born with different plumbing than Bernie Sanders. So I think she's played that as far as it's going to go, and it hasn't gone very far. Second, in terms of establishment, let's look at what really speaks to that. Her funding comes primarily from the establishment, capital D, capital establishment. She received more funding from Wall Street than any other candidate, including the Republicans. She has never held a paying job since, the 80s? A non-public job, I should say. She has gone from one government or quasi-government position to the other, to the other, to the other. She has proven herself to
unlike Bernie Sanders. You're completely correct there. Bernie Sanders hasn't spent 30, 40 years in politics.
Yeah, Bernie at least has been elected to all of his positions. Hillary got elected once. She got the others either for marrying Bill or as a consolation prize for letting Obama take over in 2008. So I'm not quite sure if I could put their two records side by side. Hillary went to Yale. Hillary worked as a government lawyer. Hillary is supported by the big business, big pharma. Hillary gets money from Goldman Sachs. Hillary has changed her position every time somebody farts if she thinks it's to her advantage. I think it's very, very difficult for her to say, I'm not establishment simply because I have a vagina.
Well put. I wouldn't downplay the female angle, though. The majority of the Democratic Party is female, and Hillary does enjoy a double-digit lead among females over Bernie Sanders. The problem for her has been that females under 30 are overwhelmingly going toward Sanders. But you brought up the Goldman thing, which Bernie has been hammering her about, and Hillary keeps saying, well, yeah, sure, I got all this money from all these big corporations, but that doesn't mean anything. Well, Peter, then why are they pouring so much damn money into her campaign? We're talking tens of millions just from Goldman people.
Well, there's absolutely no connection, of course. Now, I get paid by Latest.com. And when I say it's the most fabulous website online, with some of the best looking writers and commentators, it has absolutely nothing.
Peter. Facts are facts.
Facts are facts. It has absolutely nothing to do with the $625,000 a year I get from Latest.com. That's what you guys get paid, right? Did I let something slip? Anyway, look, okay, so let's take a look at these speeches. There's been some articles out today from some of the Clinton defenders that have said, well, she actually doesn't say anything substantive in these speeches.
Which she won't release, by the way. She's laughed off requests to have her transcripts released.
But I'm going to take her at her word. I've heard a lot of candidates speak in various forums, and they tend not to say a lot of substantive things because they don't want to get caught out. Anything they say, like, yeah, we're going to take care of that bill for you, they say very quietly and in private. So let's assume she doesn't say anything like, as soon as I get elected, man, are we going to make fucking money? No, let's assume she makes basically a version of her stump speech. Well, that makes it even more egregious because then what are they paying her for? Are they paying her just to hear her stump speech again? Well, that's very hard to accept.
From somebody that's failed to get elected numerous times.
She's getting paid because of who she is and what she will bring to them and to buy access. The most important thing people want out of politicians really is access, the chance to make their case, to pimp, to lobby, to get in front of the President of the United States and say, here's what we need in the pharmacy business. And that's what they're paying for. There's absolutely no question about it. And for her to disingenuously say, well, if you're saying anybody who takes money from corporations or things, that's not fair. Well, guess what? Bernie doesn't.
No, his speeches are about $621 each compared to her 200,000 plus.
Probably does it for bus fare.
Pretty much, yeah, probably the ticket.
Well, they also talked about foreign policy a bit last night, and Hillary she always reminds me of George Bush when she talks, but Bernie's biggest weakness, I think, is by far this foreign policy issue. Josh, is this going to be his downfall? And we have seen poll numbers where overwhelmingly even Bernie supporters favor Hillary on defense, ISIS, foreign policy, and yesterday he was fixated on North Korea as one of these huge threats to the U.S. Isn't this going to be his downfall more than how left he is?
I think so. At least with the type of voters that he needs to pull away from Hillary in places like South Carolina and Nevada to really make a run of this race. The thing that I was shocked by was, first of all, that they asked a question at all about Afghanistan. That was astounding. But neither of the candidates seemed prepared to answer it. They both gave pretty poor answers. But what I thought was very telling about it was the way that they bullshitted their way through it. Bernie bumbled and rambled and, talked about, sort of the general philosophy that he has, which is responsible withdrawal and, to make sure that the Taliban or whoever isn't going to, take over Kabul. And Hillary Clinton, all she started doing was just listing facts that she knew about Afghanistan at the moment, which were like things like troop levels and where the problem areas are. And that, I think, alone is why she wins the foreign policy debate, because even when she doesn't have an answer ready, she sounds competent. And people who love Bernie love him for his passion. But in a general election, your passion is great, but are we going to die from North Korea or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so he has to really get better at that, or as soon as if Clinton can pivot away from defending her progressivism into areas of experience, I think that will be the message that works for her and not Bernie.
That's a good point. I think when you mention types of voters, younger voters don't tend to worry about things like defense and foreign policy, but the older voters that he has to win away from her certainly do. Peter, how big a problem is that going to be for Bernie when, he's just bumbling all over his words when he brings up the Middle East?
It's less of a problem in the long run than it was last night. I agree completely with Josh. This was the weakest point for Bernie last night. The thing is this. You can learn about foreign policy. Bernie can get some smart people to educate him. He can get some good talking points put together. He can go to Afghanistan. He can learn as much as he needs to learn to answer these questions better. Hillary cannot unlearn her money from Wall Street. She can't unlearn whatever may happen with the emails. And more importantly, if Bernie would ever get his shit together about talking about her experience, her record, past the Iraq vote, I think he's got some very strong points there, particularly vis-a-vis Libya. Let's not forget, he talked a lot about Hillary's Iraq vote in 2002, and it's worth bringing up. But I think, it's never been mentioned that in 2011, Hillary was one of the strongest voices in the Obama administration about bombing Lebanon or Libya and getting rid of Gaddafi. That has turned into an absolute clusterfuck to the point where on the front page of the New York Times today, they're talking about Obama reconsidering going back into Libya militarily. That would be a really good point to focus on in terms of her experience. After that, I think he also can poke at her experience on Iran, where nothing really happened under her time, and she actually was very strident about more sanctions. How it took John Kerry to move that process forward, how it was only under John Kerry that relations with Cuba opened up. The problems we're looking at in North Korea, she had 4 years to do something about, same as China. Her famous reset relationship with Russia and Putin was an absolute crash and burn. So I think, Bernie can educate himself, and more importantly, he can he really needs to get his act together. And as soon as she says the word experience, he needs to bring up some of these examples of her experience.
Judgment over experience. Well, Bernie was asked yesterday why he's not willing to compromise on his positions, and I just don't think that's the case. This is a guy who's been in Congress, who's been a mayor, who's been in the Senate. He has worked with Republicans. He has gotten things passed. Eric, sure, he has big ideas, but why do we assume that he won't be able to work with Congress worse than, say, Obama, who is also to the left of Hillary?
Well, I think with Sanders, the reason he's saying that right now is it's different when you're on a campaign trail for a national election. If you look like you're willing to compromise, it makes you look weak in the eyes of your voters, so they're more likely to choose another candidate who appears strong. It's sad that that's the way that the current election cycle is, but that's the type of voters that you have to pander to, unfortunately.
Josh, do you really think that congressional Republicans will be more willing to work with Hillary than Bernie, given, regardless of what the actual policies they're debating are?
Well, see, I think that's entirely what's important about it. We know how healthcare fights go in this country, and especially if Bernie Sanders is trying to dismantle, not dismantle Obamacare, but dismantle the health insurance industry, Democrats from states like PA, Indiana, Delaware, on the West Coast will absolutely fight and stop him because, unfortunately, industry is a constituency of, your national elected representation. Everyone talks about, there's a video going around that I've written up a story for Latest.com about, where Elizabeth Warren was talking to Hillary Clinton Elizabeth Warren was talking about Hillary Clinton and her support for a bankruptcy bill, and then when she was a senator, she voted, her opposition to a bankruptcy bill, and when she was a senator, she voted for it. And she said that's because she saw Wall Street as a constituency. One could argue, now I understand that it goes much deeper than this, but I'm just saying one could argue that industry is a constituency of representatives. So to bring it back to Bernie, people from PA and other states where health insurance is kind of one of the main industries that their citizens work in, will fight tooth and nail to stop single payer from happening. If it's about free college, maybe he might get that. I don't know. It depends on how he would pay for it and what kind of congressional majority it is. But these big sort of issues that Bernie won the issue debate. Hillary is not fighting him on the issues. That's why she's trying to be a progressive. But when she talks about being a progressive who gets things done, as I wrote in an article a couple days ago, she will get things done, but these aren't these big sexy things that sound great on the campaign trail. It'll be things like corporate tax reform, or I can't remember the other ones because they're so boring. But my point is that the problem with Bernie Sanders' ideas and getting stuff done, working with Congress and not being willing to compromise. If it's a tactic, it's genius. Like if he's saying I want single payer so he can get a public option and get maybe 8% more coverage and lower some costs, then he is a genius. Okay, says you.
He will, though. Because that's the way the system is. You can't expect that he'll get the far left-wing stuff. He's just saying that right now so that, as we said before, he'll meet in the middle eventually instead of free education.
I find it
off or something.
To go back to the real problem we were talking about with Hillary, it's Bernie, if he compromises, compromising from way on the left. Hillary's already compromising from the middle.
That's right. So she has more to lose, whereas Sanders has more to gain, at least for the everyday man. It should be gender neutral.
I think there's two important points here. First is the contradictory way that Hillary was speaking about all this Congress stuff last night. Early in the debate, of course, her whole attitude was, well, we might as well not try because it won't work. Congress will block Bernie. And if you recall, at the very end of the debate where they were talking about what she might do during her very first 90 days in office or something, she was talking all about the things she was going to get Congress to approve for her. So I think there's some issues there. Second, I'd like to hear a more specific list of the things she has accomplished. She's always labeling herself a progressive who gets things done. I'd really like to hear a little bit more specifics on that. She tried as First Lady to get some kind of health care legislation done. That didn't happen. As Secretary of State, I'd like to hear someone list up her actual specific concrete accomplishments as opposed to photo ops and B-roll and hugging it out with Aung Suu Kyi and Burma. As a senator, I don't know that we can point to very many specific things she accomplished. So again, going back to Bernie, I'd sure like to hear him stop that debate at one point and say, can you kind of give us a list of those, please?
Well, with that said,
oh, yeah, she killed bin Laden. Sorry, I forgot that.
With her bare hands. With that said, Peter, do you think that anyone won the debate last night? Or did anyone lose it?
It's a tough one. I mean, they both scored points on each other, and as we said, Bernie was very weak on foreign policy, and it was very noticeable. I would say Hillary lost the debate more than I would say Bernie won the debate. In the sense that it was a contest, and we have to have a winner and a loser. I mean, there it is. But I think overall, yeah, we could toss a coin. That seems to have a long history with victory. But, she hasn't done anything to push back against the accusations that she's in the tank with Wall Street. That just keeps coming up, and she keeps coming up with dumber and dumber responses. I think attacking Bernie personally was a huge mistake on her part. Mm-hmm. He's gone out of his way to run a non-attack version of a campaign, and for her to kind of pick on him and try to do it disingenuously by not saying he's being mean to me I don't think that helped her. I don't think this position that she likes to take where she's the victim of something all the time. The Republican conspiracy, Benghazi, this and that and the other thing. I don't think that helps her. It doesn't make her look strong. It doesn't make her look president. I mean, what is she going to do as president? Well, Putin was mean to me. It's a vast, Asian conspiracy on trade. I don't think she reached people that were neutral or on Bernie's side, which is what this is all about.
Josh, do you think anyone won or maybe lost the debate?
Well, I think that no one won more than Hillary did the night of the CNN town hall. Her CNN town hall, that half hour where she took questions and talked, I think was her best hour or so on the campaign
Bernie had
trail.
A pretty good hour also, though.
Oh, he absolutely did. But again, he was Bernie. He was what you see is what you get. Clinton, she always has a hard time, especially in debates, coming off as the kind of charismatic person that people who, claim to know her say that she is. So I don't know. I thought she did really well there. I do think that the debate was kind of a draw. Bernie had big moments, especially talking about Wall Street and campaign finance, but Hillary had a couple good moments too. The one thing I thought that was really interesting was her pointing out that apparently the one Wall Street vote pro-Wall Street vote that Bernie cast was the deregulation of swaps and derivatives, which directly led to the 2008 financial recession. What bad luck.
Interesting point. That legislation was first proposed by Bill.
Yeah?
All right. Well, yep. Good.
I was just going to say, I do think that at least in terms of interest generated, Hillary probably won because, she dominated online, and that's the first time that's ever happened.
But I'm not sure because that one moment where the two of them sparred it out and Hillary looked really bitter and tried to play the victim role, I think Bernie handled that really well, and he did hammer her hard back on a couple points for her Wall Street ties, and she had nothing really to say about it. It was kind of like...
it was Bernie's best moment of the debate, no question.
And I know leading up to that debate, too, within a couple days, Anderson Cooper was grilling her in another interview about that, and it was simply like, oh, it's just that's because that's what they offered me. And then he pressed her, saying, well, you were in office. I think it was disingenuous to accept money for speeches. And her response was, I didn't know I was going to be running for president in 2016 at the time, Which, if anybody has a brain, was total bullshit because she was totally running for president the moment 2008 happened.
I was watching the news earlier. Howard Dean was on there, and he was saying that he was one of the people that helped, draft Hillary into the presidential race because she didn't want her run. Like, shut the fuck up. All right, let's move on though. Bernie was asked this last night. He's asked every time, how are you going to be able to win over, being so far on the left, being able to win over general election voters? Why isn't this question ever asked in Republican debates? Why doesn't Ted Cruz or Donald Trump have to explain how they're going to, after saying the just far-right bullshit that they spew, Peter, how are they why aren't they asked how they're going to win over progressives and independent voters?
Well, first, let's start with the thing that there's a lot of national polls that show Hillary and Bernie very close. Some of them show Bernie actually ahead of her. So this, this electability question seems to be somewhat facetious on the part.
We'll talk about that, but just why is this only pinned on Bernie? How are you going to win over the other side's voters? Yeah. Never in the Republican race.
It's a hell of a question. It's a hell of a question, actually, and it raises the issue of how the media treats these candidates. Everybody on the Republican side is some flavor of conservative nutcase. I mean, they vary in their nuttiness. Trump and Cruz, fighting on one end of it, and then Rubio trying to anchor the other end. But I mean, we've come to this weird place where Republican candidates are allowed to cite Jesus Christ as their mentor and pray on stage as part of their political thing, and it's perfectly now somehow acceptable. So I think the idea is that since all the Republicans are like this, the question sort of fades away. I think, again, going back to my concerns about the media, the media thrives on controversy. They thrive on trying to poke candidates to see if they can get a reaction. And, the electability thing always gets a reaction out of Hillary and certainly will provoke a response. That's the best I can come up with, but it's a great question.
Well, I think it's interesting because I feel like it intuitively feels right that the socialists would have a harder time being elected. But let's look at the actual numbers. We talked about this on Tuesday too. Today we saw a Quinnipiac poll. It showed that just 39% of registered voters have a favorable opinion of Hillary, compared to 56% who don't. That's literally Donald Trump territory. He's at 34% favorable, 59 unfavorable. Bernie has a +9 favorable, so it's completely. And then not only that, but today and in every poll we see, he has bigger leads over Rubio, Cruz, and Trump. Yep. And why aren't we asking Hillary how she's going to win over voters who hate her and have been hating her since the 90s, Eric?
But I think what it comes down to with Hillary, like, we all know she has a terrible record, that she lies. Like, most people who follow this stuff trace that. But when it comes down to a general election, when it's, let's say, Hillary wins, and it's Hillary versus Trump or Cruz, then it doesn't matter anymore because it's just the partisan politics. Okay, I'm voting Democrat because I don't want crazy Cruz to run the country. And so I don't think she has to worry about the electability as much unless Sanders seriously challenges her and there's a threat that then he can win the nomination. Whether we get there, it's tough to say, but I don't think she'll struggle against the Republican candidate. I don't.
Yeah, every month that goes by, it's a completely different race. So today, the Quinnipiac poll we just mentioned had Bernie trailing Hillary by just 2 points nationally. The same poll 2 months ago had him down 31%. That's a huge leap. And we've also seen Fox News polls, and another poll had him at 12 back after he was down 30-some-odd points in almost every single survey in December. Josh, are we underestimating how well he can do once we get past these early states and go into Super Tuesday and when the contests get quicker?
Well, I think the major benefit to Bernie Sanders of having the electability question asked of him so much is that he gets a chance to answer it a lot. And so, when people hear things over and over, it becomes just part of the narrative. So, eventually by the time Nevada's over, the question will be, people say you're unelectable, you say, and then they'll make his response part of the question, and so the answer gets to keep evolving throughout the campaign. And that, to get back to your question to Peter, I think that is a huge mistake on the Republican Party's, or at least the moderators' faults for not asking that question. But, they don't ask that question because they believe that independents and anyone who's not a libtard is already with them, so they don't worry about appealing to the majority of the country because they think they are the majority of the country. And somehow that confidence, just like I guess when you try to get the pretty girl's number and you go up with confidence, you end up with the number. Maybe that's how they keep winning. I don't know. But they don't seem to care about appealing to moderates or mainstream because ideological purity is so important to their party, which is why I think it's interesting that ideological purity is starting to become a really big issue on the Democratic side. And I wonder if it's going to play the same way. Because here's the thing, I don't think any Democrat would, if it were Hillary Clinton and anyone on the Republican side, cast their vote for the Republican side. I mean, maybe someone would vote for Eric would probably vote for Bloomberg, not the New York guys. I would have to imagine you guys wouldn't. But I'm just saying, I don't think that that's what's going to happen. Whereas, so it's weird to me that they're so concerned about that electability issue.
It's especially ironic. It's especially ironic given the fact the last two presidential elections they have lost in complete and utter landslides. Like, it was never even close. Yeah. So, yeah, it's great to have that confidence to walk up to the girl, but when you got one leg and cross-eyed, you're not going to get the number. That's what the Republicans are.
And not to take us too far off topic, but just real quick, there was a great report from the Houston Chronicle in 2014 after the midterms that talks about how the electoral math shapes up. Pretty much a Democratic broomstick can get 250 electoral votes, on election night. Like, if the states go the way the states are probably going to go, this should be a cakewalk election for Democrats, which is why I think the strategy had been not so much to coronate Hillary, but to make the primary process quick, quiet, and just have a general election strategy all the way forward. But what thing though, and I think that is a good sign for Democrats, is that with this new debate and then the successive debates they negotiated, they realized that, like in 2008, all this attention is going to help. I mean, the reason Trump is dominating polls was because he was on TV every 10 fucking minutes. But he didn't win Iowa because at some point voters apparently actually think, so who knows?
Post Iowa Trump is a thing of beauty, though. I'm loving his media attention right now.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
the F-bombs and everything. It's great. No more choir boys.
He did. I knew he was saving it. I knew he was going to drop it when he needed to the most. I knew it. Oh, it makes me so happy.
Once religion's not something he has to worry about now, he can just kind of do what he wants, and that's where he thrives.
Yeah. I mean, he's a New York guy. He's New York.
He's the definition of New York guy. All right. Well, on Tuesday, we're going to have voters finally decide in New Hampshire, and Bernie, unlike nationally, was actually supposed to crush her in this one, but now his lead has been shrinking every single day. And one poll actually today had him leading by just 9 after he was up by more than 20. Peter, what is the actual number at which Sanders has underperformed?
You want a number for Tuesday?
No, but I mean, he was supposed to win by 20, so if he doesn't reach expectations, it's a loss, right? So what is that number?
Yeah, I mean, he needs to have whatever people are going to accept as a clear victory. So, I mean, anything close to Iowa is not going to cut it for him. But, the idea of coming out ahead 5, 6, 7, 8 points, something like that, where he can come out and say, look, I beat her. You guys talk about electability. I just beat her. I either beat her in Iowa or came pretty darn close. I beat her in New Hampshire, and now we're moving on to Nevada and then South Carolina. That's really what he needs to be able to say coming out of it. Hillary, she was kind of hinting about an underdog strategy for herself. I mean, again, that is just gonna fail. Nobody sees her as an underdog, and it isn't going to be good for her to come out, and try to play that game. Well, she may.
What I think is going to happen is that New Hampshire will go to Sanders, and then obviously South Carolina to Clinton. and they'll just kind of be a wash-off. Those two will just cancel each other out, and it's on to whatever's next.
Josh, is
Nevada.
there a magic number?
Gain ground in South Carolina.
Yeah, is there a magic number? And will he actually? How big a deal is it if he doesn't reach it?
If Sanders wins by 5 or 10%, I think that's a success. Polls before any major election are always wishy-washy. You can never actually guarantee the numbers. So I think a 5 or 10% victory is good enough. If he beats her by any more, then it's a landslide. If he loses by less, if he beats her by like a couple percentage points, then, maybe we can question it. But I think it'll really come down to South Carolina. If Sanders can not get beaten by like 10 or more in South Carolina, that'll be more impressive.
Oh, New Hampshire's weird because independent voters can vote in whatever primary they choose, and New Hampshire has a lot of independent voters. Josh, how big a factor do you think that'll be in the Democratic side or the Republican side?
Here's the thing. I think it will be a bigger factor on the Republican side just because there's so many different types of personalities over there. You're probably going to get, like, Trump's probably going to have some pretty good independent support. You might see Ben Carson with some sleeper independent support because he did well in Iowa after completely, for what he should have gotten like
Iowa's
another
exactly
like 2%.
Iowa's the kind of place that guy should do well. I don't think there's another place
That's true. That's true. A couple prayer circles and you got at least 4%. So I think it'll be a bigger deal for them. But the thing with, like, on the Democratic side, I don't know, with elections, the polls, right, as it gets closer to election day, the polls tend to be, get more accurate. And I wouldn't be surprised if you looked at those polls that Hillary's gains are coming from the undecided voters. And that's how she beat Obama in 2008. Now, again, she likes to say that, she came into New Hampshire in 2008 completely the underdog and beat Obama, but Obama had a momentum bump from winning Iowa, and she was able to beat him still. And I think, but if she does if this happens this time, she ties or actually wins New Hampshire, I think that will be a big fucking deal. And if Bernie but if Bernie wins clearly, I say if it's under 5 points, Hillary might, be able to throw some shade sort of the way he did with Iowa. But I think ultimately South Carolina and Nevada are going to be the really big tests because those are the states that have the high Hispanic and high African American majorities. Bernie doesn't have to win South Carolina, but if he doesn't get at least half the black vote, he's in some serious trouble.
On the Republican side, it's an interesting narrative because Ted Cruz won Iowa, but it's been your boy Marco Rubio that's rising in the polls and getting the Iowa bump. In fact, not only
I'm Team Hillary, Team Rubio somehow. I don't know how this happens.
You're the only representative, Team Rubio. But there was actually not only has Rubio been in second place now for the last week, there was a poll that came out today in which Kasich is third and Cruz is fifth behind even Jeb Bush. Josh, do you think that Ted Cruz can finish in the top three in New Hampshire, or do you think that the moderate guys will rally behind someone like Kasich?
Here's the thing. I don't know if I can divorce my hopes and dreams too much from, like, to be analytical about this. I'm not surprised because, again, New Hampshire does not go for the, I'm a Christian first, American second horse shit. That is not what you do in America or in New Hampshire. New Hampshire, what? You live free or fucking die, So I feel like the guys who are trying to sell themselves as the adults in the room, which are Bush, Kasich, and Rubio, because again, they're all talking conservative nonsense. Like they all want to, require. Like if you consider abortion, you have to get pregnant twice or something. Like they're ridiculous, but it's sort of reading between the lines. They try to be the adults, and I think that's what plays in New Hampshire. So that's why Kasich is doing better. I would be shocked if he finishes in the top 4, and if Cruz doesn't, that's pretty impressive. That would be, I think, really impressive. And if anything, the best evidence we have yet as why Iowa should just shut the fuck up for at least one cycle.
Go back to farming.
Due respect to Iowa, we love Iowa at Latest.com.
We can get all behind that one. Yeah.
All right, well, with that said, Eric, who do you think will win the New Hampshire Republican primary? And who will finish 1, 2, 3?
I don't know, maybe I'm hopping on Team Rubio over
Do
here.
you think that he can actually beat Trump, or do you think he can come close?
No, I think Trump wins it. I think Rubio comes second,
How
and then
close?
third will be one of those. How close? I don't know. It's a tough one. I think Trump wins by like 3 to 5%. I can't give an exact number.
I like it.
I think within 3 to 5% Trump wins. Then it's Rubio. Then we have a little bit of a drop off into like one of those other candidates like Kasich or possibly, I don't want to say Jeb because his campaign's been so pitiful, begging for
But
claps
even
and stuff.
Jeb finished ahead of Ted Cruz in this last poll.
I know, but we all know polls before these elections are kind of faulty. I want to say that Ted Cruz squeaks in pretty close to third or fourth just because of his Iowa victory. But hey, if he doesn't, yeah, let's give a big middle finger to Iowa and just like push them out of the picture from now on.
Well, yeah. Josh, I guess it's a foregone
I
conclusion.
don't have
Trump
to
is
love
most
Iowa.
likely going to win. How close do you think Rubio finishes?
I would think that if the the perception of Trump's sort of downslide, like again, the saying fuck is really going to help him. I think. I really do. I think people are going to love that because again, if you're angry like the Trump people are angry, you really want to hear it's like, oh, finally a president talking like I talk. So I think he does well. I think Rubio, it's either going to be he really underperforms and everybody's kind of even, or he does come in way first and then everybody, like Rubio, Bush or Kasich, one of those guys, like maybe sneaking into third. I wouldn't be surprised, again, if Carson is in there too, just because he's not as Christy, as religious as Ted Cruz.
Well,
I know what I mean.
Argue with you on that one.
What I mean by that is Cruz is very like aggressive with his religion stuff. He's like, I believe in Jesus. And, Ben Carson is just like, I believe in Jesus. He's cool. Like, he's very soft-spoken about it. And I feel like New England religious people like that. They're the fucking ones who are like, pray in private and shut up about it. So I think he might be one of the, like, low-end ones. Cruz might do well because he's the devil, but I don't know.
Peter?
But yeah, I think it'll be Trump, Rubio, and another establishment guy.
Peter, how close do you think Rubio comes in New Hampshire on Tuesday?
I mean, it's really in the hands of God. I can't speak to his will. But I think Rubio's going to do well. I think Trump will win, but not by much, because people there are just not going to, buy into his crap as much as they did in Iowa. I think Rubio's going to do very well. I think he'll be very close. I think third is going to be a very interesting battle. I think in the end, Cruz will probably pull enough votes to be in third, but I think it's going to be very tight. And if there's a break, somebody there, I could easily see Kasich nudging himself into third, and really putting this race back into the interesting category. If for any reason Trump were not to win, that, as though we've predicted it many times, that could easily be the beginning of the end for Trump.
So one question for you, Josh. How many percentage points is the fuck worth?
Oh, I'm gonna say 6, maybe 6%,
right.
6 fuck points.
Okay, so
one other thing I do want to.
Don't know
I have a question though.
What the quote was from, the Trump quote. He was talking about the companies that went off to Mexico and moved their operations there, and he's saying how he's going to make them come back. But then once he makes them come back, you can tell them to go fuck themselves. Well, then why even bring them back?
Yeah.
What are you going to say, Josh?
I was just going to say, I don't know if the guys who dropped out of New Hampshire are going to be on the ballot, like your Santorums and your Rand Paul. Um, and if they're not going to be on the ballot, they won't matter. But if they are, I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't there was like some Republican turnout that just gave their support to these guys who are gone just because, especially the Rand Paul guys, because pretty much all of them are now talking about fucking Gary Johnson or whoever else the Libertarian Party is putting up. And I went to their website. There's a guy, I swear to God, in a cavalry uniform, but it's not the United States cavalry. It's that shit. So those guys are not going to be voting Republican in the general. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they still try to like give Rand Paul a strong showing or something like that, because Santorum's going to go to Ted Cruz. Yeah, so I mean that might play. I mean that might play a role too. That might eat up somebody's. Somebody like Kasich.
What?
Yeah, but
Okay.
his supporters don't back Santorum because they like what he thinks. They just like the fact that he wants to make all abortion.
I mean, if you're a Santorum or Huckabee supporter, there's still tons of options out there for you. You can still jump.
Yeah, you're gonna go right to Cruz. You're gonna go right to Cruz because he's.
Or Carson.
I mean, how did he start his stupid speech? Like, to all the glory to God. It's
to
like,
God
come on, man. You thank the voters first, God second.
All right. Well, on the other side, Peter, how close? Did you want to jump in? I was just going to ask, how close do you think Hillary comes to Bernie in New Hampshire?
I don't know. I haven't seen the most recent polls. I mean, we've been kicking around the 5% number, and for lack of a better one, I'll just throw in with 5%. There's no more debates, right? There's no more Democratic
Not
events.
Until after. No.
Not that I know of.
So
yeah.
I'll go with the 5% plus. I'll go 5% and up.
Eric, do you think she can cut his lead that much, given what he started with?
Well, I mean, looking at the polls from today, he's only up by 9 or so. So I think, he'll score a 5 or 10% victory, closer to the 5. 10 would be a pretty solid victory in his hands. So if, he gets like 55 or 56%, then I see her coming a little below that.
Josh, do you think that she can finish that close to Sanders?
Again, barring any, without any sort of surprises. Like, for example, I wonder if Hillary wouldn't have won Iowa much more handily if the State Department hadn't all of a sudden been like, by the way, 22 emails, can't see them, happy voting. Like, I don't know. That made no sense to me. So unless there's nothing like that, I think Hillary does get close. I think it's going to be like 3 points tops between them. And then again, Hillary will call it a victory, Sanders will call it a victory, and then they'll both move on to South Carolina where, this will probably continue until at least Super Tuesday.
What's our prediction of South Carolina? Because I feel like that's a more interesting one.
There really hasn't been a lot of polling, so it's a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But it's probably going to be. Hillary's going to challenge him. I don't think that he can cut into her lead the way she has here in New Hampshire.
I think 60-40 on South Carolina for Clinton.
Here's the thing: they're going to campaign completely differently. Hillary Clinton, we're going to get Black Preacher Hillary again, which is one of my favorite Hillarys. I mean, I love when she gets her Black Preacher Hillary. And here's the thing. Black people love it too. Like, they love seeing, like, the old corny white lady trying to be like, I've been no ways tired, or whatever the problem was.
That was a great quote. Statistically, Black people do favor her a lot more than Sanders, so that's definitely going to be a big help. All right, one last question. Let's fast forward to.
But then again, Sanders has. Yeah. I was just going to say, Sanders does have, I think, better inroads with, like, the Black Lives Matter groups, which is going to really help him with the youth. It's just that I don't know if the Black Lives Matter movement and the sort of older, middle-aged to older, Black vote, I don't know how they all feel about it. Like, there might be some support, but then again, there might not be, because
I think it's the same as white voters. I think older voters do tend to favor Hillary, and younger voters, whether white or black, do tend to favor Bernie. So, okay, last question. Let's fast
it's true.
forward
And
to.
we think like Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can finish your thought.
Well, I was just going to say, we tend to think of it as like one big voting block because of how it turned out for Obama. And when the black vote is that one big group, it can sway the decision. And I think that's why, and so that's why I think that that's the sort of the most important contest. I mean, I really don't think that Hispanics are, like the Hispanic vote, Democrats are going to fight as hard for it as they need to, or as they thought they might have, because Trump pissed all over the RNC's reach out to the Hispanic initiative. So
we'll see what happens if the nominee does happen to be a Hispanic, though. All right.
That's true.
Eric, Wednesday, we look back at the New Hampshire primary. What's going to be the biggest surprise on Tuesday?
Biggest surprise? Maybe Clinton edged closer than she deserved to.
Okay. Josh, biggest surprise on Tuesday night?
Ted Kennedy comes back to life and announces his candidacy.
You might win too, Peter.
Wins the primary in a landslide. No, I think the biggest surprise will end up probably being, if there is a surprise, something about Hillary, something not good about Hillary.
Okay. All right, so you got two different ways to go here. Email. Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Another one. Peter, biggest surprise that we can look forward to Tuesday night?
I think it's going to be on the Republican side. It's either going to be how well Rubio does or how poorly Ted Cruz does, or some combination of the two. I think the Democrat side is the script is written, and I don't think it's going to change so significantly that it'll be the news.
Well, I think John Kasich can also surprise some. I think John Kasich can also surprise some people. It's in New Hampshire. That's pretty much it. But
does it matter?
Yeah.
No. But in the end of the day,
first of all, he is the best candidate with a Pittsburgh accent in the race.
I mean, he actually would have been a good candidate if it was a different race. But I think he can sneak in there. But this is the four of us talking, so you could pretty much bet on none of this happening. Bernie's going to win by 30 points, and Jeb Bush is going to win the New Hampshire primary.
Yep.
So,
Jeb Bush 2016.
Jeb Bush 2016. We'll leave you with that. Tune in next Wednesday after the primary, and we'll see how wrong we were. Thanks, and keep reading Latest.com.